You rewatch Malcolm in the Middle for the yelling, for the kitchen, for Lois sounding like the only adult in a hostage negotiation, and for Hal smiling like a man whose nervous system has been trying to leave his body since 1997. And somehow, Bryan Cranston gave the same fear to two completely different bodies. Everyone talks about Walter White, the transformation, the moral collapse, but Hal Wilkerson might be the scarier performance, because Walter White is a fantasy of control, a man who decides he's done being afraid and becomes a monster instead. Hal is what happens when control never comes. He doesn't break bad, he just breaks quietly. And then he makes breakfast. Think about that house for a second. The mismatched furniture, the carpet that's seen too much, the kitchen where Lois is always standing, always managing something, always 3 seconds from full detonation. The boys' bedroom is essentially a disaster zone with a door. Reese is angry, Malcolm is narrating, Dewey's making art in a corner because nobody's paying attention to Dewey. The intro is just the whole family being launched out of frame, and you have to assume they're fine. And in the middle of all of it is Hal, in his bathrobe, with his coffee, looking like a man who's been slightly surprised by his own life every single morning for 15 years. He's physically committed to whatever feeling is happening to him right now. He staggers. He flings himself down hallways. He leans into door frames like the door frame is the only thing keeping him vertical. On a 2000s network sitcom at 8 p.m. on Fox, that was funny. It was also something else. As a kid watching Malcolm in the Middle, Hal seemed ridiculous because he panicked over everything. The garage, his boss, his wife's birthday, which the show built an entire episode around. As an adult, the panic reads a little differently. He has a job he doesn't control, kids he can't control, plural, relentless, expensive kids who break things. Money he can't control, a marriage that works specifically because he and Lois are insane in opposite but complementary directions. His job doesn't make him feel competent, his house doesn't give him quiet, his finances don't give him slack. There's no moment in this man's week where the load isn't heavy. So his childishness isn't stupidity. It isn't absenteeism. It's a pressure valve. He needs somewhere to put it. The fear, the quiet dread that the whole thing is one missed payment, one bad week, one kid incident from coming apart at the seams. He's not panicking because he's weak. He's panicking because he's paying attention. Hal Wilkerson runs on the Joey panic loop. It is what happens when a man has too much fear in his body and refuses to let it turn into cruelty. Pressure builds. Bills, work, kids, marriage, the dread that one bad week could knock the whole house sideways. And instead of going cold or absent or cruel, Hal turns the panic into a show. Fear becomes dancing. Insecurity becomes a hobby obsession. Boredom becomes a months-long fixation on competitive race walking. Exhaustion becomes a smile big enough that his kids might not notice the house is always one disaster away from collapse. Cranston said it plainly in 2009. Hal's core was fear. Heights, noise, spiders, losing his job, failing as a father. Once you know that, the clowning makes complete sense. Hal isn't clowning because he's oblivious. He's clowning because he's overwhelmed, and clowning is what he found that keeps the joy on. That's why a skating lesson becomes a religion, why career day becomes a breakdown, why a hobby never stays a hobby for Hal. Season 1, Episode 13, Malcolm wants to learn to skate for street hockey. Simple enough, Hal offers to teach him. Hal doesn't teach, Hal mythologizes. Suddenly there's a philosophy, there's history, there's something called the Brotherhood of the Wheel, which Hal delivers with the gravity of a man announcing a religion. Malcolm looks like he's already regretting this. Then the episode ends with Hal in a sparkly blue outfit, skating with genuine, actual skill. Spins, glides, the whole thing. All while Malcolm watches his father become someone else entirely. Cranston relearned enough of it to do the skating himself. That physical commitment isn't incidental. Hal needed one place where he was good, where he was more than a provider running on fumes, where the panic went quiet for a few minutes and what was left was grace. He found it on wheels, in sequence, in his own driveway. Malcolm in the Middle is a pressure cooker disguised as a comedy. The family's broke, the house is loud, there are too many people in it and never enough of anything. Money, space, quiet, food that isn't slightly frozen in the middle because the toaster oven is too small. In the roller skates episode, the boys spend an entire scene trying to divide leftover curly fries equally. That is not a joke about chaos. That is a scene about scarcity. The Wilkersons are not dysfunctional. Jane Kasmerick said it directly. The family was highly functioning. Loud, imperfect, cash-strapped, overstimulated, but stuck together in a way that holds. The chaos is not evidence of failure. It's evidence of people under pressure who keep choosing each other, regardless. Malcolm narrates, but Malcolm is a kid. He can only see his own story. Lois and Hal are the load-bearing walls. She responds to scarcity with control. Every rule, every consequence, every "you are not leaving this house until," that's Lois turning dread into policy. Because someone has to. She is what really sounds like when no one else wants to handle it. Hal wings it. He doesn't fight the chaos, he just tries to absorb it. Sometimes that works. Sometimes he ends up with paint everywhere. Hal's episodes usually begin with pressure. It can be financial. One unpaid insurance bill, one holiday layoff when the family was already running tight. It can also be professional. A career day presentation that goes sideways in ways that takes a while to process. It can be relational. An anniversary, a birthday he forgot, a wife he loves so much that trying to be worthy of her literally short-circuits his nervous system and he starts sleepwalking. He hits the wall. Then comes the turn. He doesn't go cold. He doesn't disappear into silence or cold distance. He finds an outlet. Race walking, painting the garage, competitive poker, accidentally becoming the emotional leader of a group of bodybuilders who need help using an ATM. And the outlet becomes everything. It becomes urgent. It becomes a whole world with stakes and rivals and a score to settle. The family absorbs the fallout. Lois narrows her eyes. The boys get dragged into it, and the episode resets. Hal keeps going because that's what fathers do. Hal is what happens when the fun parent is also clinically overwhelmed by being the fun parent. He loves these people too much to go cold, and control is never really available to him. The world will not hand him that, so he does the only thing left. He performs, he dances, he skates. He keeps some warmth alive long enough for the family to survive another week. Season 2, Episode 14, Career Day at Dewey's school. Hal goes in planning to explain what he does for a living. He stands in front of a group of children. He opens his mouth, and somewhere in the attempt to make his office job sound meaningful for a second grader, he realizes he can't. Not because he can't find the words, but because there are no words for it that don't sound like a warning. He fakes a medical leave. He disappears into the garage. He covers the walls with paint. His speech before the breakdown is about adulthood selling you doors of opportunity that turn out to be trapdoors. He delivers this to children. Then he goes home and makes art in the garage because that is the only emergency exit available. That's where Hal gets uncomfortable. The ridiculous stuff is never separate from the boring stuff. The sequence, the painting, the race walking, all of it comes from the same place. A man trying to prove work has not flattened every interesting part of him. The sparkly blue outfit exists because the office exists. The driveway is where the whole thing becomes visible. While Hal is out there turning a skating lesson into the brotherhood of the wheel, Lois is inside managing the household from bed. She threw her back out. She's running triage through baby monitors, medicated, immobilized, and still supervising. Lois Wilkerson cannot stop even when her body demands it. And Hal is in the driveway giving Malcolm a ceremony. The episode ends with the performance. Sparkly blue outfit, real skill, genuine grace. Malcolm watching his father do something beautiful and ridiculous at the same time, in front of no one. As a kid, you laugh because your dad is being insane. As an adult, you understand what you're watching. A man for whom the pressure never fully lifts, who found one domain, small, silly, embarrassing, where he can still be excellent, where the fear goes quiet, where the running on fumes feeling stops and what's left is something like beauty. He turned a skating lesson into a ritual because rituals feel safe. Lois is stuck in bed and she's still running the house. Hal is on his feet and he still looks like he's auditioning for control. One parent holds reality, the other holds wonder. The whole theory is in that one episode. You just have to be old enough to see it. The easy reading is strict mom, goofy dad. Lois is the villain, Hal is the victim, two weather systems constantly colliding. That reading lasts about 5 minutes into adulthood. Lois isn't the villain, she's the consequence. Every rule she enforces exists because someone has to enforce it, and no one else in that house is going to volunteer. She carries the triage. She makes the decisions that hurt. She's the part of the family that touches reality and doesn't flinch. Hal carries the permission to be ridiculous. He's the proof that joy is still available even when things are hard. Together they form one functioning parent, split into two exhausted people. Lois is the family's emergency brake. Hal is the radio still playing while the car is on fire. On adult rewatch, this becomes one of the show's strangest pressures. A middle-aged married couple who are still, visibly, actually into each other. Not despite the chaos. Inside it. Hal and Lois are erotic, and bickering, and exhausted, and deeply bonded. And very few network comedies let that combination feel this alive. When Lois gets insulted at Hal's family reunion by his dad, Hal eventually stands up to his father. And the important word here is eventually. Because Hal does have courage. It just usually needs a little motivation before it can become action. Left alone, Hal spirals. He second guesses. He folds himself into whatever version of peace keeps the room from exploding. Lois changes that. She gives the chaos a line. She gives the family a center of gravity. And sometimes that order gives Hal access to the spine he already had but couldn't find on his own. The sitcom framing makes it look like one of them is always wrong. But what you actually have is two people running an impossible household together, each handling the part the other one can't. The irony of the show is that Millennials didn't grow up to become Malcolm, despite Malcolm providing the show's point of view. They grew up to become the man Malcolm barely understood. We watched Hal as kids and just thought he was the funny, unstable dad. We ultimately identified with the kids. But then we grew up and realized adulthood was not represented by Malcolm's narration. It was Hal's face before the coffee worked. It was the bills, the kids, the job that doesn't explain itself, the pressure to be emotionally present while privately wondering if you're failing at it in real time. Hal had all of that before the language caught up. He knows he's overwhelmed. He can feel it. Bryan Cranston has said he refused to play Hal as someone who's disinterested in his family. He has to care. He can't turn that feeling off. He just has nowhere safe to put it except the next ridiculous fixation. The Career Day episode is a great example of this. On one hand, most kids naturally want time to move faster so that they can enter adulthood quicker, while the adult in the room says, "Be careful what you wish for." Hal's childishness looks like a problem, like a man who never fully grew up and keeps pulling his family into chaos. Watch what it produces instead. The house stays warm. The kids grow up knowing their father is present. Weird, chaotic, slightly unhinged, but present. He laughs, he tries. He makes things ridiculous enough that even hard weeks have a story attached. Burnout doesn't always look like giving up. Sometimes it looks like dancing too hard. Starting an absurd hobby at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Making your kids cringe in a public park while wearing a unitard. Pretending the panic is personality so the people you love don't have to feel the weight of it. Hal is not keeping joy alive because it's easy. He's keeping it alive because someone has to. And he has decided it's him. That's not incompetence, that's a choice. A quiet, daily, mostly invisible choice to be the person in the house who still believes fun is possible, even when the insurance lapsed, even when the Christmas money ran out, even when the job feels like a trap. He doesn't require the world to get easier first. He just keeps going, in sequence, if necessary. Hal arrived in the strange gap between the old sitcom dad and the prestige TV monster dad. The old model had authority. Lessons from an armchair, stable jobs, problems solved by the end of the episode. Then TV gave us a different kind of broken father. Tony Soprano, Walter White, Don Draper. Men with panic, rage, shame, and secrets. But also money, power, and dramatic lighting. Their damage looked cinematic. Hal's damage looked like trying to survive a regular Tuesday. His dysfunction was administrative. An unpaid insurance bill. A career day presentation gone badly. A Christmas gift that isn't ready, and a panic lie that sends the family driving nowhere for an hour. When Malcolm in the Middle debuted in 2000, a single-camera family comedy with no laugh track was still a risk. Linwood Boomer built it like a live-action cartoon. That mattered. It gave Hal's body permission to go huge, while the fear underneath stayed real. The show sat far from the warm nostalgia of the Wonder Years, or the chummy bickering of Home Improvement. Too warm for cynicism, too honest for comfort. Hal as a dad sits somewhere, ironically, in the middle. There's no control fantasy left, no wealth buffer, no emotional distance to hide behind. The sitcom container made him feel safe to laugh at. The reality underneath made him impossible to look away from. Younger viewers rewatch Malcolm in the Middle and see the chaos. They find Hal funny the way you find anything frantic and physical and unhinged funny. The skating, the bodybuilders, the anniversary sleepwalking, it's pure comedy. Then there are the parent viewers, the Millennial rewatch accounts, the Reddit threads from people in their mid-30s who put the show back on and couldn't stop thinking about Hal and Lois. One 36-year-old commentator put it plainly. As a teenager, identified with Malcolm. As an adult, just feels bad for Hal and Lois. Because all they're trying to do is keep the kids from dying or ending up homeless. That's the whole show. That's a different type of comedy. Cranston's legacy is mostly Walter White, and rightfully so. But Hal has become the role people talk about with a different kind of affection. Not because they're the same character, but because they're opposites. Walter White turns fear into power. Hal turns fear into the daily work of staying intact. We don't talk enough about which one is harder. Before Hal, TV dads usually came with a lane. The first lane was authority. Dad has the answer. He's measured, slightly above the chaos, dispenses the lesson. His emotional life stays mostly off camera because authority doesn't require one. The second lane, lovable uselessness. He's there for physical comedy. He gets corrected by the mom. His incompetence is the joke, and the joke is the whole character. And then the third lane, the prestige version. Damage plus power. His dysfunction gets scale, mythology, consequences. Hal runs differently. He's not the wise father holding the family steady. He's the exposed nerve of the house. Every fear, every humiliation, every small disaster hits him first, and somehow everyone else feels it too. But guess what? He shows up. He's in the driveway. He's at the school. He breaks down in the garage, but he's in the garage, and you can find him. He stays visible even when he's falling apart. His gift to his kids isn't wisdom. It's availability. He's always slightly coming apart, but stays reachable. That mattered for viewers who were watching in 2000 and would grow up to be parents themselves. He gave them a template where messiness and love don't cancel each other out, where showing up exhausted still counts, where the joy doesn't have to be perfect to be real. Television rarely lets that kind of father feel heroic. Most people don't become Walter White. Walter White is a fantasy, a man who decides the fear ends here, who channels everything terrifying into power, who refuses to be small. It's a great story, but we know that adulthood is way less cinematic and way more embarrassing. Most people become Hal. Tired, weird, loving, panicked, overextended, still trying to make the house feel fun, still picking absurd hobbies, still embarrassing the kids, still looking at the person they married and feeling something complicated that includes exhaustion and desire and genuine gratitude and mild terror, often simultaneously. Hal is not a great dad in the way that phrase usually means. Stable, measured, in control. He's a great dad in the way that actually shows up in real life. Present, overwhelmed, making it up, keeping the joy alive by force of personality when there's no material reason for joy. He puts on the sequence when the house is falling apart. We laughed because Hal was ridiculous. We rewatch because Hal was real.